Well, today in Capitol Hill, it will be a who's who of America's top spies. In about 45 minutes, the nation's leading intelligence officials will gather for the annual Worldwide Threat hearing, laying out the biggest threats to American interests at home and overseas.
Set to testify, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, the Director of the CIA, Leon Panetta, and National Counterterrorism Center Director Michael Leiter. And if the past is any indication, there will be news from this hearing. Yesterday, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano said the U.S. terror threat may be at its highest since the 9/11 attacks. And another top intel official said Osama bin Laden is no longer the nation's #1 threat. That distinction moves to Anwar al-Awlaki, the English-speaking cleric in Yemen.
I actually consider al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, with Awlaki as a leader within that organization, probably the most significant risk to the U.S. homeland.
Joining us live from Capitol Hill is a former FBI agent and chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the House, Republican Congressman Mike Rogers, and the committee's ranking Democrat, Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
Well, let's talk about some of the headlines we just got yesterday. I think some people may be surprised to hear that Osama bin Laden, in the view of Michael Leiter, is not public enemy #1. It's Anwar al-Awlaki. Do you agree with that assessment? Do you expect to hear that from the other intelligence officials? And explain why.
Well, I do believe that it's a little bit subjective, but al-Qaeda is clearly a threat. And what we've found is the merging of certain al-Qaeda elements, the al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, the al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and Osama bin Laden's area in Afghanistan and Pakistan, all together is the single greatest threat. And personalities are going to rise and fall in that organization, but the organization itself poses that serious threat.
Congressman Ruppersberger, I imagine one of the questions you guys may have is, okay, if Yemen and al-Awlaki is the #1 threat right now to the United States, what does that mean for our resources? How should U.S. administration resources been, when it was Afghanistan, we moved a ton of resources there. Do we have enough resources on the ground dealing with this threat in Yemen?
Clearly, the best defense against terrorism is intelligence, and it's extremely important that we continue to give the resources to all of our intelligence agencies. As far as the Yemen issue, Yemen is a place where al-Qaeda has a safe haven, where they can train and where they can do what they're attempting to do. My concern is the homeland, and I think that what Leiter said yesterday is very relevant and important, because Anwar al-Awlaki is American. He understands our ways. He's recruiting and using all of the social media to recruit homegrown terrorists, and that's a major threat, and we're going to have to really refocus a lot of our resources on the homegrown threat, yet balance our civil liberties.
And Congressman Rogers, let me ask you about the other piece of news to come from Janet Napolitano yesterday, that the threat level from al-Qaeda, she said, is at its highest as it was around 9/11. Why is that?
Well, you have to remember, this is something that's been building for time, and it's because of the way they've structured the new al-Qaeda organization, if you will, because they brought affiliates in. So now you have more affiliates around the world targeting and trying to kill not only United States citizens, but our allies overseas. So when you look at the effort that they're putting in to conducting an attack, it clearly gives us a reason for concern. And as Mr. Ruppersberger mentioned, that's why this intelligence portion of this whole equation for national security is so important.
Congressman Ruppersberger, I guess going to that issue here in a minute, there's two types of way to view a threat against the United States. There's the massive attack that was 9/11, and then there's the smaller attacks, harder to stop, like the attempted Christmas Day bombing. Is that what you believe Secretary Napolitano was referring to, that those type of threats are at their highest level, but maybe not a massive 9/11 style attack?
We have been working, and we have been going after al-Qaeda internationally for a long period of time, but their connections worldwide. But now, what terrorists want to do, they know they're not going to win the war, but they want to disrupt our country and our way of life. So what we really are concerned about now is the homegrown terrorist. It's very difficult in the United States to deal with that. And with this new leader, Anwar al-Awlaki, and the fact that he understands he's a United States person who now speaks English, understands the culture, and he understands the new social media and how to recruit homegrown terrorists. And that is a major threat. Just like we had at Fort Hood is a perfect example of someone, the individual there that he recruited who ended up shooting all the people at Fort Hood.
And final question I'd like to put to both of you. You're standing together, Republican and Democrat.
Yeah.
I know it's a signal that you feel in these intelligence matters are beyond partisanship. I have to ask you about an allegation that's actually emanated from the Hill recently that our nation's intelligence agencies failed to detect or see the coming revolution in certainly Tunisia, Egypt, and perhaps other places. Do you think that is a fair accusation, or is this just the old Washington blame game kicking into high gear again? You could start with you, Congressman Rogers.
I think it's the Washington blame game. If you go back and you took a very critical look, and Dutch was a prosecutor, I was an FBI, we understand the thoroughness you have to go through in an investigation. I don't know how you say that. There was lots of information leading up to the event. Nobody had a crystal ball. Nobody could say on this day that an event that happened 1,400 miles away was going to trigger it. But what we did know is all of the elements were there for this to happen. And afterward, and this is the most important part of that equation, the real-time intelligence, the day-to-day, minute-to-minute intelligence was exceptionally good for policymakers to navigate their way through this very, very difficult circumstance.
Congressman, anything to add, Congressman Ruppersberger?
Yeah, I would agree with Mike. Look, we have some of the best intelligence agencies in the world. They're out there all over the world attempting to protect our country from attacks. Intelligence, again, is the best defense against terrorism. But when it comes to intelligence, intelligence agencies collect information, they analyze information, and then they disseminate that to wherever we need it to protect ourselves. The intelligence community looks at trends and they get information, but they don't have a crystal ball. They can't predict the future. And so I think that we have to keep focusing on the resources, keep communicating, right, and make sure all the intelligence agencies work together.
All right, I know it's going to be a busy day for both of you. Republican Congressman Mike Rogers, Democratic Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger from Michigan and Maryland, respectively. Thank you both. Thank you for coming on together. Good luck today.